We're going to try this again. I'm still getting the kinks out for Restream. But hi, hey everyone. You're going to see my dog kind of like ripping and running, but it's going to be okay. So come on in the room. Happy Monday. Happy Monday. Let me check the space over here to see what we are doing. Yes, I see we are live on Facebook. That means we gotta be live on YouTube. I'm assuming. Let me double check a space just to make sure. I don't know why I always gotta double check as if, yep, I'm live. Okay, we are streaming. So again, I'm coming from two cameras. So hi, Facebook and YouTube, and hi, Instagram. So we're just going to go ahead and get started. So again, we are doing 30 days, 30 ways of leveling up our healing. This is day 2. So, day 1, we just kind of got into it. I introduced myself again. Hello, I am Nicole Nash. I am a licensed mental health therapist. I specialize in trauma and grief. And this particular healing challenge is going to be on, we're going to talk about trauma, and we're going to get into different types of trauma and how to identify. So yesterday, it really was me just giving the background to you all as far as who I am, how I'm connected to therapy, why I'm passionate to do what I do. But also, I went in and I just gave you like the basic term when it came to trauma. And so again, trauma is hello, welcome in. Again, trauma is an event which elicits emotional reaction, and it has still present day significant impact. So, I talked about a car episode, but let me flip it up and I want to give you all a different episode, different example, excuse me, is let's say trauma background is I witnessed domestic violence in my house between my parents. And anytime I hear raised voices, it triggers me. I get alert, I get on edge, right? And let's say I'm now operating in my business, I'm operating in my career, in my lane, I'm flourishing. But every time someone raises their voice, I get hypervigilant. Maybe I become aggressive. Maybe I shut down. And here's the thing about trauma, and we're going to get into this a little bit more today, is your body unfortunately can't differentiate between non-threatening events and threatening events. So sometimes when we're already hiding, we may actually misperceive something as being threatening when it's not. Meaning, can you tell the difference? And with this example, raised voice, could you tell the difference between somebody who is being aggressive because they're raising their voice or someone who's just passionate, right? All the same, your body is unable to tell the difference. So your body is going to get into response mode. So we're going to actually get into some trauma roots and some trauma fruits today. How are you doing? Let's do a check-in. How was your Monday? Mine was good. Mine was really, really good. It wasn't a typical, sometimes Mondays can be hectic. No, it was actually a go with the flow, and I enjoyed it. So yeah, we're just gonna come on in the room. Hi, welcome, welcome. Again, chime in, ask me questions. If you want to hop on, we can hop on and you can talk. But hey, we're just gonna continue talking about trauma for this healing challenge. And so we're gonna get into like raised voice. I know, and I understand about raised voices. Someone mentioned that they don't like raised voice either. And it is, sometimes it's a sensory thing. So not all things are trauma, but I'm not going to get into that rabbit hole. But, sometimes it's a sensory thing. All the same, though, if we are dealing with trauma, sometimes your body just can't process the difference between a raised voice and excitement versus a raised voice as it's coming at you and they're threatening you. But yeah, so we're going to talk about trauma roots and trauma fruits today. All right. So I'm gonna again give me 15 minutes, y'all. Okay. And we're gonna rock this out. Okay. So when we talk about trauma roots, I want you to think of trauma roots as the seeds that have been planted because of a traumatic event. So because something has happened, an event has happened, and this event is cognitively, which mental, as well as emotionally distressful, a seed has been planted that forms roots. We have to be careful because if we don't catch these roots like a tree, it's going to get rooted. It's going to take root. Okay. And we're going to get into some of the trauma roots and some of the concepts. But again, I want you to think about as trauma roots are formed from the seeds that were planted, and the seeds are just our traumatic events. Okay. So here's the thing. Trauma happens in a lot of different ways, unfortunately. Trauma can happen because of it's intentional. Um, Meaning that they knew exactly what they were doing, and sometimes it's intentional in the sense that maybe it's like it's let's go with negligence, meaning they knew something was up, but they just didn't intervene, and so trauma ended up being the case. It could be a neglect, maybe they didn't understand the impact it will have, and the end result was trauma. Sometimes it is unintentional because I'm gonna be real, we live in a broken world, right? So sometimes it is unintentional, is random, and life happens. Life be life. And what's up? Come on in the room, people. But life happens, right? Um, Sometimes, though, and I want to get into specifics tonight, is sometimes trauma is unintentional, but it's still intentional. And I want to talk about transgenerational trauma just for a little bit. We're not going to go too far deep in this rabbit hole tonight, but um, sometimes trauma happens because of family traditions gets passed down. And sometimes, like, and y'all chime in. I don't know if y'all ever heard any sayings like, well, that's what we did. Well, my parents did it to me, and I grew up fine. Or, well, we had to go through it, and it's this language that where we kind of start normalizing things that we should have never normalized. One of the sayings I like saying is like, sometimes, especially within a family, we get in the unhealthy habit of normalizing what we should have always pathologized. Meaning just because it happened didn't mean it was right. Just because it was frequent doesn't mean that it's actually healthy, right? And sometimes we get in the disguise of family tradition, but it really is trauma. It's something that's and traumatic. And yes, roots can form, and roots can continue to grow and be passed down when we don't address it and call it out. Like I believe calling a spade a spade. You know, we already know the definition. So if it's still impacting you in a negative way, chances are it's not family tradition. It's not a rite of passage. And can we like get rid of that? Like, trauma should never be a rite of passage, meaning just because you went through it, it's okay for the next generation to go through that same thing. Like I did it. It happened to me. No. And sometimes I think we get into the unhealthy habit, especially when it comes to this strong super person mentality, is that sometimes we wear trauma like a badge of honor. Like, well, I've been through this, and this. Like it's a bragging right. When in reality, I'm actually saddened that you had to go through that, and that. You should have never had to go through it, right? But unfortunately, because of this broken world, we do have to face trauma. We do have to deal with trauma, but it should never be like a sense of like a badge of courage, like, honor, like this is something that I went through, you know? And so sometimes trauma can get passed down and some roots can form because of unintentional intentionality. Meaning we just don't catch it and we don't stop it within our families. We don't stop it within our communities and generation. But yeah, so another thing I want to go with is I want to get into some examples of trauma roots tonight. Um, it could be combination of things. It can be due to abandonment. It can due to attachment or lack of attachment. It can be due to a lot of the common concepts of things is like you have woundedness, you have being unlovable. Maybe you feel you're unlovable, you think that you're unworthy. There's attachment, there's rejection, abandonment. Those come up quite a bit when it comes to trauma roots. And sometimes it's hard to identify the root. The easiest way sometimes is actually to identify the fruit of the trauma and work your way backwards, meaning looking at the visible things that you see that's not working in your life. So, yesterday I talked about like the different domains because I wanted you all to kind of look at and take inventory of the areas in your life where you're seeing a lack. You're not seeing as far as like the abundant life that you want, right? And so that goes into play because you may actually be seeing signs of trauma fruits. And trauma fruits can actually look like in the guise of you have maybe because of abandonment, you have either attachment issues where either you're being codependent or maybe you're being dissociative. You're not really forming the relationships. Rejection, like I said, comes up a lot. Unworthiness. Maybe you're chasing after the wrong people when it comes to friendships and relationships. Maybe it's people pleasing. And here's the thing, sometimes when we get into trauma fruit, y'all, sometimes overpraise being a survivor. Yes, it really is. It really is. Like surviving something, like, oh, I made it through. And that's actually the bare minimum, I think. Like, we're supposed to survive. Why should we celebrate that? Should we be thankful? Yeah, but why should we celebrate just being able to survive, right? But sometimes that goes through, the poverty mindset. Sometimes we see that a lot, but yeah, thank you for commenting on that. And again, y'all chime in, right? So going back again, some of the fruits you could see is like a lack of connection. But also, what I want to say is sometimes we're quick to call out like the negative, socially negative type of fruits, like aggression, the bully, the person who maybe is aggressive and is inconsiderate, the person who is shut down, who doesn't form relationships, the hermit, the outsider. Some of those socially or culturally unacceptable kind of, fruits, we're quick to call it out. But we are seldom quick to call out the positive, the ones that we embrace socially, because let's be real, sometimes it benefits us or it benefits other people. And that is your people pleasing. That's still a fruit, a trauma fruit. It is your worker bee. It's the strong woman, the strong man, the superman, the superwoman, the person who has it all together. They don't need anybody. That could also be a trauma fruit. Also it's the savior mentality that sometimes our helper bees they get into. So sometimes it's easy to call out the negative ones, the ones we don't enjoy, but also it's the socially positive ones that sometimes we struggle to really embrace that as a fruit. So I want you all to look at the fruit. If you're struggling to know what the roots are, definitely look at the fruit and work your way backwards on it. Okay. And work your way backwards, identifying and looking at all those different areas we talked about yesterday. But here's the thing, and this is what I'm going to leave on. Again, we're going to keep it really, really short, unless somebody wants to come on down and talk, because I would love to chat and just share. Um, Here's the thing, when it comes to addressing trauma roots, you have to you have to address it two ways. One, we have to look at the traumatic seed, the traumatic event. We have to look at it physiologically and emotionally. Just because, again, our body is not going to be able to tell the difference between, a threat and a non-threatening situation, especially when we have a traumatic past or a backstory, right? So think of your body as like foam, like memory foam, like a mattress, right? And think of your brain as a mental Rolodex. So naturally, when we go through scenarios, we're looking for just stimuli, we're looking for similarities. Our brain just likes to compartmentalize like that in a certain degree. But however, though, when it comes to the body does struggle to recognize between, threats and non-threats. And so what you have to do, we do have to address the physiological cues, mean your natural urges, your reactions. That's going to come if you do get triggered. We also have to address the emotional impact. So when we look at trauma, we have to address it emotionally. But here's the thing, we have to address it cognitively. We got to go into our minds, y'all. That's why the battlefield is always in the mind. I love, was it Joyce Myers? She wrote a beautiful book on the battlefield of the mind, because the battle happens in our mind, right? And so here's the thing, and I'm going to leave with this as a tip. When I say we address it mentally, we have to, when it comes to that seed, that event, we have to first identify what is the story, the narrative, or the connection that we begin to form about that event. Meaning, how do we even view that event that happened? How do you end up viewing the domestic violence, the rape, the physical assault, the tornado that just completely ruined your house, the robbery, losing your job, getting kicked out of school, losing friends, having to relocate several times. How do you view those events, right? And then the second part is, what narrative are you telling about yourself because of those events? That's why we have to get into your mind, y'all. When seeds are planted and roots take place, these roots are telling like this story. And it's a story about the event itself, but it's also a story about us. Because this happened, this must mean this about myself. And here's the thing. Remember how I told you yesterday, sometimes we ingest lies, and how you know it's a lie is because it's just not working. It's not fitting in your life. Your life in that area is regressing, is dysfunctional, is unhealthy, you're dissatisfied, right? Like, so one thing I want to say is we have to first identify what the false narrative is. And here's the thing, we have to compare it with a standard of truth. That is the only way we begin to uprooting the trauma roots and really begin to battle with trauma. You have to, one, begin to embrace that the narrative you've been telling yourself is a bold-faced lie. And even if there's like maybe point, you know, 0.5, 0.9, 0.1% truth, it's not enough to ingest the whole. Like, let's be real. Would you ingest something if it was, if you know it had an ounce of poison in it, would you ingest it? Would you drink it? Hey, welcome in. And so if you wouldn't ingest food or, you know, drink liquid or anything like that, like why would you consume it? Why would you consume it, right? So if it was like even a little bit of lie, why would you still consume it as truth? So first you have to understand there's something about the narrative that you're currently operating from. It is a bold faced lie. And the only way you know it's a lie is you have to have a baseline on something. You have to have a measure of comparison. And what do you compare a lie to? Well, you compare it to the truth, right? Meaning, I know this is a lie because this is actually what it says. And if you're Christian, it's always going to be biblical truth. Toxic either way, exactly. Like, so what does when it comes to your standard of truth, if you go biblical, what does God actually say about you? What does God actually say about your situation? That's the standard of truth. And you raise that standard of truth. That lie cannot defeat that standard of truth. And even if you go non-biblical, what are standards truths in your life? And here's how you can look at a non-biblical, an affirmative type of type of um, type of standard of truth is look at asking yourself, what's a future version of me? What's a future healed version of me? What would I be doing? What would I be saying? How would I be moving? How would I be thinking? Okay. And if you accept that and embrace that as truth, that is now your standard of truth that you go and you compare against the lie. Well, what part of my area today is not matching up to that version? What part of my area right now is not aligning with that standard of truth? Because that is the new standard of truth you have to operate from. And you tweak and you change to make sure that you're walking out the standard of truth. Who does God say you are? Who do you want to become? That's really what it boils down to. That's why we definitely have to fight trauma mentally, cognitively, y'all. Okay? So what I'm going to leave you with this tonight is I want you to write down what are the standards of truth and what are the narratives that do not line up, your current narratives that do not line up to that standard of truth. What are the fruits of the lies, of the false narratives that are not measuring up to the standard of truth? And then you walk your way backwards, and then maybe you will discover your trauma roots. Okay? That's it for today. How was that? Was it okay? Yeah, my foot's going to sleep. So if you see me on IG, you see in the real background. If you see me on Facebook, I got everything blurred. Yeah, I got boxes all around me, but it is what it is. So it's we just gonna do. But I tried to blur some area, but y'all seen the real deal on IG. And I thank y'all for showing up. So y'all, thank y'all so much. This is it. So again, we're gonna tune in to the live tomorrow. Again, the lives are not, I'm not saving the lives on IG. However, I am you can catch a replay on Facebook as well as awesome. Thank you. And thank you for coming in. But you can also catch the live on YouTube as well. And if you haven't already, you can follow me on Nine Fruits Counseling, but also on YouTube, I am C.N. Nash. So definitely follow me. But yeah, tomorrow we're gonna get into it once again. And yeah, under 20 minutes, y'all. So I'm doing what I do. All right, y'all. I will let y'all go. I wish y'all a great night. God bless. And I will see you in the PM tomorrow, God willing. All right. Bye. Bye, y'all.